Hey guys, we're back. I'm actually going to go through the process of tramming your Chinese 6090 CNC router. This video has been a long time coming. I've taken a lot of video and I have ended up deleting it. I've tried several times to get this machine trimmed properly. It has been, for lack of better terms, difficult to do and have it hold. I am going to approach this a different way, and I am going to be using some of the tools that I have next to me, and I'm going to pan down to those in a second and show you what I'm going to be using. But we're going to try to get this tool trimmed so that it runs straight and true, and that I will have better results when I'm flattening slabs or if I'm surfacing or doing any type of 3D carving. So with that, I want to show you what I'm going to use, and we're going to take a look at those here in just one second. So these are tools that we're going to be using to get our CNC mill trimmed properly. I've taken the liberty. I have already taken off my dust shoe, and it is just sitting over to the side. We won't be using that, of course, but we're going to be using a couple tools that I did end up purchasing. One of the comments that was made in another forum was that you don't need special tools to do this, and I do totally 100% agree. I've done it many times using only a dial indicator, and even with just a piece of bent coat hanger you can do it. It is more difficult, it does take longer, so I'm going to show you what it's like to do it with the SST tramming tool. It's the mini. It is this piece of equipment right here. I really like this tool. The concepts that it works on and how it works are fantastic, so I'm gonna be tramming my mill with this, and if all goes properly I will have a plumb true straight square CNC mill here in just a little bit. It's actually going to take more than a little bit because this process is, of all things, not fast, so I'm going to be using that. One of the things that I've also found is that depending upon where you happen to get your glass is not always flat. I cannot tell you how many videos with a piece of glass on this table that I later found out was not flat. Was it flat enough? For some people, maybe. For me, no. I found that it did have a bit of a belly in it, so it curved, and that caused some serious problems trying to get it level when I started to do the first process of making sure I had a good reference surface. So in lieu of that, I have purchased, not a bunch of paper, but I have purchased a machined granite block. This block is good. I think it's 3/10,000ths over the length, or something of that regard. It was not all that expensive. It was about $50. I did get a smaller one so that it would fit on this table appropriately, but one thing I didn't plan for is my Z, so as you can see, it does not give a lot of clearance, so I will be having to take my waste board off, and I'm going to have to redo that board in the long run. But that's all part of the process anyhow, so I'm not worried about it. Some of the other tools I do have on the table here, this is actually a dial indicator feeler style gauge that is, this is 5/10,000ths per, so this is a very fine gauge, and it does have a universal spindle clamp on it. It doesn't work quite with this the way I'd like it to, but I did find a way to mount it that if you guys have questions, I can show you how to mount something like this. This is far cheaper than the SST tool, and it does work, but I can show you how to mount something like this in your spindle to do your tramming as well. I do have some calipers over here, and then of course I've got some wrenches, and I have my Allen head that I'm going to need to loosen the bolts on here so that I can move this a little side to side. For those of you that don't remember, I noticed that I had problems in my spindle not being square to the table in this regard. So when it cuts this way and then back this way, I get a little bit of a sawtooth effect, and we're going to be fixing that today by tramming our mill, and we're going to try to get that as close as possible. So first things first is I need to get this table off of here, so I'm going to do kind of a quick time lapse, and you guys are going to see me ripping the table off. I'm actually going to take the whole table off because I'm going to make a new table. I've decided I'd like to go with a insert style table, or possibly a multi-function style table that's got some mounting and clamping built into it instead of relying upon the aluminum surface of the table as it was shipped. But off to that quick video that's going to show me removing this tabletop and cleaning this whole thing up right about now. So the first thing we really need to think about when we're going to be trying to tram this mill is making sure that we have a completely flat reference surface that we can use to gauge whether the head is plumb and square to the table. As I had said in the prior part, a piece of glass that I had used I found out was not flat, and I went out and I purchased a reference surface, which is a piece of granite that looks like this. Of course, this is the business side, and we're going to be using this to register a place that is going to be flat on this table. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. We're actually going to use the tramming tool from SST in order to do that. So I'm going to get this stuff mounted up and in position, and we'll show the next steps after I get this on and the tramming tool in the mill. So we'll do a quick fast forward so you guys can see it's just mounting the tool and getting this in position. It really is that simple. We're going to be putting the SST tool into the collet that I have in here. It is a 1/4 inch collet. This is a 1/4 inch pin, and we're going to be positioning it above the reference surface that we're going to be using. And now it's time to back up one of the two dial indicators, or it can be removed too. You can do that. That is a possibility. It's just a matter of loosening the knob or the bolt and taking it out. For this particular case, we'll just take it out, and then we will start referencing using one side to level the entire plate. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to basically put the dial indicator point down onto the granite reference surface, and we are going to swing our tool around to see if there are any variations in distance when we do that. Now, I happen to know that my tool leans a little that way, and I'm going to have to probably tilt this entire thing this way. Probably such a minute amount it will be funny, but it needs to be done in order to make flat cuts. So I am going to start the process of getting this dialed in. I'm going to do it as a full video. I will cut parts out that are not necessary. I'll speed them up, fast forward, and go through them that way, because just watching me level a granite block is pretty boring. I will be using small pieces of paper to do so. That's what these are here for. So I'll be putting that under the four corners as I bring this block level, and I get as minimal a change on the dial indicator as I can as we spin all the way around. And that's how we're going to ensure that this granite block is level, 100% completely level. After that, we will replace this dial indicator on the other side. We will lift the Z-axis up and bring it back down. These two dial indicators should not read the same number, and I will show you that in a minute. We're going to go to about 10. We're going to say 10 as our reference. So we are just a hair over 10, but we're going to use that as our reference. Now we're going to swing our tool around to see if there are any variations. I'm going to swing it to the back. And one thing I'd like to point out is if you watch, the needle, it immediately starts to move. So we are lower in the back. So I gotta shim the back a little bit. Here we are back at the side, just a hair above 10. We're gonna swing over to this side, take a gander. I had a mirror for this. As you can see, we're at 0 at this point. So this is at 0 versus all the way over here, which is at 10, versus all the way back here, which is at 0 too, which is kind of what we would expect. I would almost expect it to be flat along this plane, with this side being a little higher and this side being a little lower. Now let's go verify that. So as we go back up to 10, we go back down to 0, as you can see here, and now we're going to swing all the way over to this side, and the light is not very good, but as you can see, we are at about 5. Actually, and when I look at it appropriately, we are not even on. We're not even on the granite surface. So that's how much of a difference we're really talking about here. So we have to lower our table again. Till we reference. We're going to swing to the side. As you can see, the needle's moving. As we swing to the front, it goes up even further. And then as we swing over to the side where it's completely perpendicular again, as you can see, we're even more out of whack. I'm going to repeat this process somewhere in the vicinity of 3 to 5, maybe 3 to 5,000 times, and try to get this granite block leveled. I'm not going to videotape that because that's actually pretty freaking boring. But I'll be back once I got it leveled, and I'll show you the next steps. Okay, quick update. We have almost leveled it front to back, and I want to show you that so that you guys can get an idea as to what I'm talking about. Okay, so one thing to note is that when the SST tool is mounted and it is at the far left position, we are getting a reading of about 66.5 thou. When we swing to the back, we are getting a reading of approximately 43 thou. And when we swing to the front, we are getting about 46 thou. So we got about a 3 thou difference between this back surface and this front surface, where this surface now is a little high. So what we can do is just remove a piece of paper, and this is actually some pretty thick paper, but that's what I had lying around, so that's what I'm using. Alright, so we're down on one piece of paper. Now our reading on this dial is at about 40. So as you can see, these little shims of paper make quite the difference. If we swing to the back again, we are 40 in the front, and we are 45 in the back. Needless to say, more adjustments are to be made. Okay, one thing that I ran into that you'll notice real fast is that I had a hard time reading this dial indicator when it was on the back side here. But what I have done is I've set up a iPhone so I can actually read it. And what we're reading on this side is reading about 68 thou as our start point. And as we swing that to the other side, it's hard to see, but what you'll be able to notice is that it is at about 23 thou. So the difference between this side and this side is the difference between 70 and 23. Now the question becomes, is it high or low? Well, if we lift the needle, if we lift the indicator up, we'll notice we can get to 23 like that. But what we should also note is that when we swing, the needle goes down. So it is going down and around to that point. So it goes and it passes. Goes and it passes. So it's swinging what would be counterclockwise, which means we need to lift this back edge up. And we can do that. That's easy enough to do. So we're going to reshim. We're going to put some more paper on this corner and on this back corner here, trying to keep these two corners flat still. That's the tricky part. Hopefully I can pull that off in the next couple minutes instead of the hour that it's taken me in the past. What I've ended up doing is I've put 3 pieces of paper under this corner, 2 pieces of paper under this corner. I have left this corner as my reference corner. This piece of paper, there's 2 pieces of paper under this corner. These pieces of paper, so this one's got 5 total, 2 total, and 2 total, and none. This has 5 because I started to get some wobble in the stone. So I added an extra piece of paper there to try to bring it back up. We will try to get our reference surface aligned this way, and then we will go back and we'll do it again this way. On this router, there is not a lot of changes we can make to get this plane accurate. We would have to actually shim this front edge of the router. This will actually the front edge or the bottom edge or the top edge to get that router to tilt in some way or another. But I'm going to keep going. It only took me a few minutes to do this, so just bear with me and enjoy the journey. Okay, so I have gotten it referenced to be flat, straight, and true on this plane. On mine, that's my Y. This is the Y on most people's, but this is my Y. So I have got it set, and if we look in the phone over here, you'll see that it says that we are at about 74 thou is our starting point. And if I swing this around, we're going to see that we're at about 76 thou, 2 thou difference. I honestly think that's probably as good as I'm going to get it with using paper and not using some metal shims and some other clamping fixtures to hold this thing down. I mean, gravity's just holding it here at this point, but now that we've got it square along this axis as close as I need it to be, which is in 2 thous between here and here, so that's 2 thousandths of an inch, or is it 2 10,000ths? Now that I say that. No, it's 2 thou. So it's 2 thou of an inch difference between here and here. Now I just need to make sure that I've still got my reference between here and here. So I'm going to swing this around. We stayed at 75 in the back, and in the front we are at if we look at it, it should say about 75. It's a little high, but it will. We can take out one piece over here and one piece over here to try to bring this back down, and I think I'm probably going to try that just to make sure that I've got my tool square this way. Even though square on this plane is not what I'm going for. I'm going for square on this plane. It still should have this block be completely referenced so that I can make any adjustments necessary, and those adjustments won't be fallible because I have done the due diligence of making sure that my plate is square. So I am going to finish that particular process. I'll be back in a flash. And in a strange bit of karmic fate, it would appear that I do know what I'm doing, because I have been able to now remove 2 pieces of paper, one from this corner, one from this corner. I have checked for any wobble. There is none. And it is now registering 72 all the way around, which is good. This is what we want. We now know that it's flat in this arc, and that we now have the ability to pull this up, replace the second dial indicator, and now start doing a reference between these two sides, and that's what we're hoping is going to give us the ability to easily move this particular part of our router right here and twist it a little bit to bring this edge up a touch so that we don't leave that sawtooth edge on the boards as we flatten them. So I am actually going to replace the dial indicator on this side, and we're going to take our initial reading, and I'll be right back with that. Okay, I have gotten my second dial indicator in the other side, and they are both off the surface right now. They are both registering at 0, and we are going to slowly lower the head until we get an initial reading. And I'm going to make some assumptions that these two dials are going to be off a touch. So let's give that a try. So what we've been able to do is we brought this front dial to what is going to look like 30, and this dial back here, it looks like it is at 36, which means we have a 0.006 of an inch increase in this side of the spindle, which means we need to rotate this that way. Probably like 0.04 degrees or some crap like that. But we at least now have a reference point, we have a starting point, we know that we can actually make the adjustment, we know what the difference is. So now it's time to break out some tools and try to get this thing all squared away. I am not going to bore you with the details of what it takes to do that, only because it is loosening these bolts and these bolts back here, and then moving this head back and forth. Now, keeping in mind, we want to rotate this thing. It's always a good idea to keep one of these bolts fairly tight and limit its range of movement. So we're not going to loosen these bolts and play with the head. We're going to unsnug them, is the best way to put it, and possibly with a small hammer, a very small hammer, maybe even this as the hammer, we are going to tap on what will be this side to bring it down. Doesn't that sound like fun? Fairly terrifying all at the same time. But let's take parts of our CNC mill apart and try to get this thing trimmed up. I'm going to go through the process. We're going to come back to it once I've got it all done so that you can see how it sits now versus how it sits then, and I'm going to explain the process I did and how much work it really took. Be back in a flash. Okay, so I have actually gotten it to now where each of these gauges reads about 42 thou on both sides. So we know that at this point this is flat in this plane. Now we need to tighten these up without changing that, and if history is any teacher, I know that it will change as soon as I start tightening bolts because of the friction between the bolt head and the fixture and just the torsion that we put into it. So I am going to try to keep this thing as square as possible as I tighten 3 of these 4 bolt heads. I will snug them up as a final step, but I'm going to tighten them up to a point where they are over finger tight, not cranked down, but they're actually in a good position to be to hold the spindle in position. So I'm going to do that here in a second. Oh, what fun this is. Yay! Alright, bolts are tight. We're reading 40 on this side, 41 on this side. That's a 1 thou difference across what would technically be, I want to say, 4.5 inches. This is a 6-inch wide block. So 1 thou over 4.5 inches, extrapolate that out across the entire width, which would be 6 thou over the entire distance of it. Kind of okay with that. I don't do anything really high quality, super precise on this. I don't do metal on this, just wood, and wood is very forgiving. I might tap around to see if I can take that thou out, because it will not logarithm, but it will continue on that way. So I am going to try to get that. Okay, Gotten them typed down. It is reading 40 on this side, 41 on that side, which is a 1/1000 difference over 4.5 inches. I am kind of okay with that. That is a pretty good number. So at this point, I'm going to consider this thing pretty well trimmed. We're going to check our other axes now just to make sure, and we should have similar readings on here. So, well, we're seeing 39 on this one and 42 on this one, which is a 3/1000 difference between the front and the back. Shimming that becomes much more difficult. You have to place shims behind the spindle that are very small, and I don't have any. I would normally use just aluminum cans, but those for 3/1000 are almost too thick. So we're going to call this tramming done at this point. But I did want to explain different ways to do this. So I have trimmed this mill with the SST mini tramming gauge, and it worked beautifully. I have spent less than an hour, and I have gotten my spindle trimmed. That's a good thing. If you don't want to spend the money, the block was 50, the tool was 100. I'll put links to them in the description. But if you don't want to spend the money, you just want to do this the old-fashioned way, we're going to go over that in just a second. That's going to be a lot more speaking versus doing, because I am not going to retram this mill with a different tool, but I will explain how it's done and we can go from there. Okay, well, if you made it this far in the video, you just saw me tram this mill here using the SST mini tramming tool that I got on Amazon. Great little tool. This is fantastic. I like it. I love it. I am probably going to use this on bigger mills, even though it doesn't quite have the length that I would like to see, but it is probably still going to be good enough for the work that I do. Like I said, I do not do anything all that precise. I do have a CNC milling machine for metal in my garage, as well as a CNC lathe and another CNC router in another room, but those are all pretty good setups right now, so I'm not going to touch them until I need to. But the tool that I've used in the past to get that stuff all going is this one right here. And this is a great little tool. It's completely adjustable. Specifically this part. This is the part that you would actually lock onto the spindle, the column that actually drives the power. So for this example, we would put it on our CNC router on the spindle, but it's too big. It is too big to fit on there appropriately. So if you want to save some money, because this whole thing, soup to nuts, is, I want to say, under 30 bucks, you can take this apart and use it still. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this particular top connection off. That's right, it uses a screw in the back. So it uses an Allen head screw back here to loosen it and take it off. And once we do that, we have the ability to put this piece in our spindle. Now what that's going to give us is that's going to give us the ability to swing this dial indicator further away so that we can take an appropriate reading. And this tip is going to ride on the granite surface instead. It's just another way to do it. So we would put this in our spindle, we tighten this up, we bring our feeler close to the granite surface, probably at a pretty good angle if you have the space and if you have the surface, the reference surface that's big enough. I'm going to lock it down, lock this one down, and then you would spin this in a circle using the spindle. And that would actually give you readings all the way around, just like we did with the other tool. And it would give you the ability to measure the differences between the front and the back and both sides. Therefore, you could level either a granite surface, or you could level the spindle, or trim the spindle to that surface. So this is a great tool. This is very inexpensive. Like I said, this is I'll say under 30 bucks all done. Another way to do it as well, and I did mention this before, is with a coat hanger. I know it sounds stupid, but you can do it. It's not as precise. It is great for rough tramming, You would need a coat hanger and some feeler gauges, because of course the coat hanger has no indicator on it. So you would basically be gauging it by sliding the feeler gauges underneath it. I'm going to go grab the one that I use for doing my drill press, and I will be right back. It appears that my wife stole my coat hanger to clean something out of a drain in the basement. So needless to say, I had to come up with a different solution, and this is what I came up with. This is just a piece of bent wire. You do try to make sure that this small end and this large end are at least parallel, so that when you swing it on your spindle, it's going to give you a better reference. And then as you measure it, you're going to be using a feeler gauge of some kind to find out what the difference is. So you would reference it on one side, you would make sure that it's completely flush, or within a couple thou by using a feeler gauge, swing it to the other side or the opposite side of the same axes and measure it again. Just touching. Just barely touching. If you have to force the feeler gauge under, then you're trying too hard and you're probably bending this up when you try to do it. So, but that is another way to do it. It's how I've done it for years and years and years before I bought fancy tools. And obviously my wife thinks I have too many tools and don't need little pieces of wire anymore. So, but that is going to conclude the tramming tutorial for your Chinese 6090 GZ CNC router. It is a little bit of a daunting task. You do need to make sure that you have all of your pieces and parts ready to go. Having a truly flat reference surface is a huge plus. Like I said, I had found that glass was not as flat as I had thought it was going to be. It had about a 2 thou curve in it, so it threw everything off. I could never get it flat. Not to mention, and I didn't mention this before, but I do want to mention it now, it's flexible. Glass is flexible. I could actually push on the glass and it would bend over 3 thou. So I kind of threw that out as a reference surface because that's just too much give for me. There's too many places where errors could occur, so I didn't want to do that. I will be using that piece of glass to sharpen tools though, but that will always be put on a reference surface as well, and will be flat. So, but if you have any questions, leave those down in the comments. If there's something that I didn't explain properly, please let me know. I will try to make short videos to follow up to this to help explain those parts. And if there's somebody out there that does this for a living and you've noticed I've done something completely wrong or just like horrifically bad in doing what I did, let me know. I am open to criticism. I care about the language you use during that criticism, because if you're just going to call me a stupid F, then keep those comments to yourself. If you can offer some criticism with some pointers, that's always a benefit. So to all you guys out there in the CNC community, just remember, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll try to keep bringing you videos as my days go on. I am sorry for the length of time between when I told you I was going to do this and when I did it. It's been months and months, but it is the summer months here in Wisconsin, so we work outside when we can, and that's what I've been doing a lot of. I've been actually milling a lot of wood, and hopefully going to make some great projects that I can show you on this channel later on this winter. Till then, have a great day. Talk to you soon.